Yeah, I mean, the complexities of it really get down to the details of the student's needs. And I think of in in no situation for a student who's has severe impacted adaptive and behavior needs would I go over and be like, wake up, we're doing math, wake up, wake up, wake up, here we are you awake?
Welcome to Spedsplaining, where special education gets decoded one case at a time. I'm Stefan, a former classroom teacher and current instructional coach, and I'm joined by three brilliant minds in special education, Darcy, Anna, and Leanne. Each week, they take real stories, often from right here in Washington, and break them down into plain language. We use these stories as a launch pad to explore the wild, wonderful, and sometimes frustrating world of general and special education. Whether you're an educator, parent, advocate, or just curious about how the system really works, we've got you. Let's dive in.
Okay, so this student is a high schooler with Down syndrome, autism, and a severe intellectual impairment. How the case starts. She has a long documented history of severe adaptive and behavioral needs. Her first FBA and behavior plan were in early elementary school. Stefan, were you asking about an FBA? You got it.
Well, you say it all the time. Functional behavior assessment.
Yeah, good job.
Good job.
If you want me to get real BCB, I can go with the difference between an assessment and analysis.
I almost said analysis. That's why I drew out the S and unintentionally cursed on our podcast.
Functional analysis is different than a functional behavior assessment.
Probably not relevant, but at some point you could, okay.
It's not relevant. That's also not really a school-based thing. That's a little bit more clinical. Anyway, her first FBA and behavior plan were so an FBA is the intention is to determine what's the function of the behavior. Why is this happening? So that's your assessment in which you're then building what your behavior plan is on. Because if the function is attention, you don't want your strategies to be accessing more time at recess because that's not actually meeting the need that the student has. So her first FBA and behavior plan were in early elementary school. It was looking at elopement, physical aggression, and oral fixations. In middle school, she was then moved to life skills due to demonstrating significant adaptive and, quote, intellectual deficits. So by 8th grade, her IEP has 16 goals, including multiple behavioral goals.
Give me some context. The way you said that, 16 goals makes it feel like a lot. I've asked this question before. I should know the answer to this. What's the average number of goals?
Oh, I don't know that you can say an average.
Okay, let me ask it again. What would an appropriate number of goals? Well, here, I'm pulling things from the back of my brain. I think I have this vague memory of Darcy telling me something like, well, imagine that many goals and trying to meet all of those things. Like you have to do all of this stuff, collect all this. It just seems like a lot. Like it's a lot of work to address and track one goal. So what would an appropriate number of goals be?
You normally have one goal per area that the student qualifies in, at least. Student probably qualifies in, let's say, 6 areas. So they're going way but beyond one per area.
Gotcha. Perfect. Thank you. Okay.
So she has a lot of goals, and staff are beginning to observe that she is now falling asleep in class.
In high school.
This is the end of 8th grade. So
this is still middle school.
Yeah. So they first noted her falling asleep in January of 8th grade, or at least documentation wise, and then the IEP's in February. So
when I fall asleep? When things are really boring.
So if you don't hear Darcy talk for a long time, she's just not into the case.
I would love to hear your guys' perspective on because sleeping in school is not uncommon. Mm-hmm. And I think there are a little bit of complexities around, from what I've heard, providing FAPE if the student is sleeping a lot.
Did you have medical? I mean, is there a big medical component here for the student?
This is kind of getting there, but just
Okay.
kind of in general, what are your guys' thoughts on handling, or what guidance would you give people if you hear about sleeping in school?
I would really want to know how long. Is it around the same time? Is it how is she sleeping in the evenings? What does her bedtime routine look like? Like I think there's so many things around sleep that if you're really exhausted and you can lay your head down on a desk and sleep, that's telling us something.
I think we also know that with Down syndrome, there is a lot more sleeping. I think their average sleep is higher. I don't have the stats, but that is a common thing that you see with that population. But also, some kids have seizures and then they are really tired at school the next day. There could just be so many factors, like Darcy said.
So your first step would be like, why? Like, why is the
Yeah.
behavior? Could a parent, let's say my son is on an IEP, I find out he's been sleeping in class and the teacher's kind of just letting him go. Could I then complain that you're not meeting your obligation as a school because he's just been sleeping through the content? Like that's not specially designed instruction,
potentially.
right?
For sure. I think potentially you have that argument, but I don't think that's the first place that goes, right? Like, because I think there's a need there not being met one way or another. And when I said, like, oh, you know where I sleep in places where things are really boring. Like, you've been in middle school recently. There are occasions where it is not very exciting, hands-on, engaging learning. And it's pretty easy to lay the head down on the desk and just take a little break. And, school schedules in middle school, those kids want to sleep in. They're not ready to go to school at 7:30.
The best schedule is for the district that our child goes to. The elementary bus comes at 9:00. The middle school bus comes at 7:00. That like 5th to 6th grade jump is 2 hours.
Yeah, that's huge. And think of like developmentally the age of your kids and who would actually get on the bus at 7 happily and be excited to go are the elementary ones.
Yeah. It's sports though, right? Like that's always the thing in the afternoon. That's what someone told me once when I was complaining about that same thing. Like it's nuts that you take these like middle school and high school students. We tried to play around with that a little bit during COVID when I was working in the district around like, let's take this opportunity to think about like a high school student. They're not learning super well at 7 a.m. Why can we not push the schedule back a little bit? Sports, and especially this time of year. When
we all know what the most important thing of schools is.
There you go.
So there's a number of problems that sports, creates kind of to the schedule. Yeah, it's large.
Yeah.
Although I love school sports, they are.
Yep. And that's why kids go to school at 7 a.m. to be able to do those sports or clubs or all the other things they have that happen after school.
So we
went on a bird walk there, Anna.
Well,
but unless this was like really routine and it's happening, like this kid comes into my math class or into whatever reading subject I have happening in my life skills, and every day they go and lay down and sleep, then I'm going to go, okay, what's going on?
And I think that would be true with any student. Is this a red flag for something else that's happening, or is it an escape avoid? I'm sure Anna's going to talk about that with the FBA. That could be, I don't know, but it is pretty common in a life skills classroom that there are sleepy students.
So in May of 8th grade, they have a transition meeting with high school. At this time, the parents request returning to direct OT services because they had noticed some regression with sensory, and the district denied that request without doing an assessment. And they agreed that the next time her triennial eval comes up, we'll eval OT.
But you didn't tell us about sleeping.
We're getting there, Darcy.
Yeah, we're trying to jump ahead.
So a family decides to transfer her into a different high school because she had relationships already established at that school, and they felt the teacher had more experience, so they thought her needs would be better served at this other high school in the same district, just a different, so not her neighborhood high school. Starting in September, the OT did some assessments and documented like the sensory concerns and those types of things. The OT recommended continuing consultation. And the new high school team is also noting that starting like right away in the fall that she's falling asleep in class frequently. They didn't signal it as like a change requiring an IEP revision or anything, but that it was happening quite often. And then the full 3-year evaluation was in January. So her placement in life skills is continuing with the same services she was receiving, and then have OT still as consultation, not direct service. At that time, her eval, they noted she's napping over 45 minutes per day, but she is still making progress towards her IEP goals.
It's a solid nap.
Oh, right. I try really hard to take a nap on the weekend. My youngest is napping, and I very rarely actually get to do it because something usually happens, but 45 minutes sounds great.
I just think that there's so many things that we don't know, but if this student is making progress and that nap is maybe helping with being able to focus better in the afternoon, and not having her nap may cause different behaviors. Like there's just a lot that goes into that. And I don't know if there's sleep apnea, which apparently is high percentage of students with Down syndrome.
So I have a question in regards to, in this, I can't remember when this case happened, like who my director was at the time. I thought it was you, Darcy, but it may not have been. We had a student napping pretty frequently in a life skills class, and like a concern, and I don't know if it was brought up by a teacher or admin or parent, but was that like we're saying we're serving X number of minutes in these subjects, and this student is napping over an hour a day. We're not serving those minutes. So what does that look like? Or when does that, I mean, obviously, like we're talking about needing to rule out those medical things, because you stand ready to serve a full school day, whether or not the student's actually accessing it. But how does that conversation shift when you're looking at an hour a day of lost instruction? Yeah, she's making progress on her goals, but could that make a difference in how we're supporting and serving this student?
I don't feel like the district's denying that hour to her, so I don't know. Go ahead, Darcy.
Yeah, I mean, the complexities of it really get down to the details of the student's needs. And I think of in no situation for a student has severe impacted adaptive and behavior needs would I go over and be like, wake up, we're doing math, wake up, wake up, wake up, here we are you awake? Right? Like think of what that looks like in regards to that kid. And I just think that whether you note that, whether you schedule, hey, at this time, it's after lunch, or whatever that routine is for that student, I think we need to have a better and bigger picture of what that day is going to look like for that student when they leave school. And it's not a bell-to-bell situation, which is much more real life than what we often have in school settings where it's math now and we miss math. I think this is going to be one of those situations where there needs to be a little flexibility in the programming.
And FAPE is progress. So I don't know that it's a denial of FAPE because an hour of service wasn't provided. It's more about, is the student making their goals that was set by the IEP team that includes the parent, and the district isn't shortening the day, which is always a no-no. especially if it's part of the routine. But I would want the parents to be on board with letting her sleep, because like you said, if you wake her up and she's not ready, that could mean a learning loss for the rest of the afternoon, because you just created you know, agitation in her.
Another question I've asked in the past is this impacting sleep at night? Because if we're allowing such a long nap in the day that the student is now not falling asleep at night, now we are part of the problem, like making that
Yeah.
cyclical issue, which I've definitely had happen. Like, yeah, they're a little bit afraid to wake them up because that might increase the behavior, but now we're sleeping all day and never at home, and now that's causing issues at home.
Yeah. And you can do some behavior mods to slowly wake her up by playing music, things like that to try and shorten that nap.
Yeah, and I think there's a difference between hearing every day after lunch for 40 minutes, they're taking this nap versus they're sleeping all day.
Mm-hmm.
Those
And I
are
don't hear
really
the
different
40
scenarios.
I hear the sleeping all day, and that's when you really have to get concerned.
Yeah.
Leanne, something you said that FAPE is measured in progress. Does that mean whether or not you've met your obligation to FAPE, it's measured on outcomes as opposed to deliverables?
Well, your deliverables kind of are your outcomes. So,
not always, right? Like, sorry, go ahead. You were answering my question and I interrupted you.
Well, tell me more about that. Like,
I mean, like, I'm thinking as a 7th grade English teacher, oh man, I'm going to make a very shallow statement that there's a lot more context behind this, but let's say I taught the lesson and students are not achieving, right? Like, I can deliver the academic content, I can deliver the workshop, and like not every kid is going to pick up what I'm putting down, which is the art of teaching universal accessibility. And if it's measured in outcomes, I guess my question is, if a student doesn't meet progress towards their goal, then, oh man, maybe we cut this because maybe this is a bad question, but
is this like the chicken and the egg situation? I taught it, but they didn't get it.
Kind of. Oh, and that's what I was like, when this is loaded, it's, for the record, I fully believe it's a teacher's responsibility. Like, student learning is a responsibility of the teacher. It's a, two-way street for sure. But like that idea of like, I taught it, they didn't get it, not my problem, is I guess I'm maybe it's my lack of knowledge around the SPED world. But if you're thinking about like providing access to FAPE and a student doesn't meet progress on their goal, like I never got in trouble for students who didn't meet standard on like the standardized test at the end of the year, and we don't retain students because there's research around that says that just doesn't work, in gen ed. And so I just, that was an interesting, when you said, well, FAPE is measured in outcomes. We do a lot of analysis of outcomes in gen ed, but whether or not a student had access to their education or like attended school isn't always measured in outcomes. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I understand. We do have a maybe higher standard in special ed to prove that our instruction is working. Okay. But I also think there's a piece that you bring up, that if they have minutes instructional time that they're providing a service and they're not able to meet those minutes because the student's sleeping, like if they say they're providing 90 minutes of reading and they can't meet all of those minutes on the IEP, I'm sure there could be a complaint about that. But at the end of the day, since the Andrew case, it usually comes down to progress. I think they would want to build in that sleep time into the IEP and not have a promise of providing minutes that they can't provide because the student's not awake. But this is going to be a fun one to learn what the outcome is, because
that passes my gut check on like I know I've been doing a lot of reading about grading and assessment recently, and so it's just at the forefront of my brain. But some of the grading practices in Gen Ed are so archaic and
Mhm.
don't reflect what students actually need, don't reflect what students actually know about a given topic. So it makes perfect sense to me that once again, the SPED world would be a little bit ahead of the Gen Ed world and saying like, hey, all you guys have done is talk about let's accommodate this student's need to nap. Because here's all these other things. When Anna asked, how does this impact FAPE? Darcy said, well, I'd want to know more. So, because this
Mhm.
could be a part of that student's specially designed instruction because it could have impacts in other places. And that's just what SPED does so well, is look at the individual education of students. And so I guess, I don't know, that was kind of a foreign concept to me, that like a student would be in your class napping and the teacher might go, you know what? Maybe they need this, because like my view on education has a tendency to be, or my experience with education is, I get frustrated a lot when we focus so much on compliance and not what's just best for the kid, right? Like this is how our system works, fit into our system. And so I don't know, I guess I'm hearing you guys saying, let's mold the system around the student. And you're all nodding at me like I'm an idiot because this is just what you do. Okay, I got it. I've caught up. I'm here.
The student might have biological needs that we have to factor in as part of the learning plan too.
And they might not. They might just be pulling the wool right over our eyes and tricking us because they don't like whatever's topic or subject or who else is in the room. But to Leanne's point around progress too, I think it's also pretty clear that if we're not seeing progress on their IEP goals, we have an obligation to rewrite their IEP goals.
Gotcha.
So beginning in February, staff start documenting a huge escalation in behavior. So this included aggression, elopement, and property destruction. There were several intense episodes, both at school and some incidents at home. They even had to call the police at home for support. So the team started doing some more like intensive data collection. And now we are in May of ninth grade. So they are amending the IEP to offer ESY, and the behaviors are continuing to escalate. The team agreed to conduct an educationally related mental health assessment to understand the escalation. So this takes place in California. So I did kind of a little bit of a deep dive on that, and I think we've talked about those before, but that educationally related mental health assessment is designed to support students' social emotional needs to individually tailor the IEP for what those are. So it looks like sometimes that's individual counseling or group counseling or other kind of social work services. Since we don't have that in Washington specifically, what would that look like if the student were here?
A partnership with another agency, probably.
Which is really complicated when the student has autism and Down syndrome and intellectual disability and limited verbal abilities. Very difficult to find somebody that can provide that type of service.
Do you know of one?
Not locally.
That was a mean question.
No, I was
like,
just talking to not that long ago a school counselor about the benefits of play-based therapy and how that would really help. And so, and like right after I was looking at this case was when I had talked to her, and I was just thinking of like what a need we have for those types of things. I mean, several years ago, I had a student that was non-vocal and witnessed a death of a loved one, and there was no way for her to receive therapy. And just the trauma that we expect, not like intentionally expect, but these kids just have to live with it when we are moving towards a very kind of pro mental health stance in our state, at the very least, if not our country, that we're really underserving such a vulnerable population in that regard. And so we were talking about why do we not have it more here? And she said the intricacies in licensure for it in Washington are really limiting. Like you have to serve your hours at like with a specific type of supervisor in a specific type of location. And like, there's only a couple that can even provide that in Washington, and they won't do it virtual. And so, it's just those types of things. Like the chances of it coming to our region when there is no one here is, unless someone moves over here, we're not going to be able to get it as long as like that licensure barrier is the way that it is.
I would challenge the generalization that we're getting better at mental health across the board, because that may be true in an adult system, and there may be some, and I don't know, but there may be more structure in the adult system. In the youth system, in connection with schools, I think it's still really hard for a neurotypical kid to access mental health services in schools. I don't think that barrier is like, oh, we just have someone we call and they can come in. Like, I don't think we're there as a system yet. Maybe some of the really large urban areas, but that has not been an experience that I think would be common for families in our region.
Yeah, I said that meaning more, I think the stigma of we should be giving mental health supports to adults or students is lessening. That like it used to be no, we don't do that. We don't need that. I don't, right? Like that's not actually helpful. And I think that mindset is changing, but the access I think is still extremely limited. Or maybe just in my circles, because all me and my friends are in therapy. So maybe that's why I feel like the stigma is changing.
I think people do definitely talk about their mental health a lot more in typical regular conversations. But I also know that there are a ton of kids and adults with developmental disabilities that have mental health needs. I'm seeing something that says they have a higher rate of mental health needs than the average population, and there just really isn't access to services.
I think it's also hard because how do you, in the school setting, and maybe this is the same as a gen ed teacher thinking about, I don't know how to deal with the severe behavior and behavior management and modifications, but what experience and access do special ed staff know about dealing with mental health issues?
Also, you might be dealing with parents of that student that also have disabilities and mental health issues, and it gets really complex. You can't ask the student how they're feeling. They can't describe that. There's so many barriers.
But in that same vein, like in my world, we like my ed tech into this is like the conversation around cell phones, social media use, and support with students and those types of things. And like teachers are still responsible for teaching the SEL standards and benchmarks in every class. And so clearly not the same kind of mental health support the student needs, but like there is a flavor of that in gen ed. And people just get very personal about their cell phones, and that everything just gets.
We also live in really small communities, and when you start talking about mental health, there's a possibility that really sensitive family information is being disclosed to the school that parents don't want that. And I think it's really complicated though to write a social emotional goal and have any kind of effectiveness. Anna and I were talking about this yesterday, like some kids need just straight mental health, and social emotional curriculum isn't going to meet that. And it is teachers don't get a lot of instruction on how to provide good SDI and social emotional learning.
And sometimes their only professional learning happens from Stefan Troutman, and that's just mediocre at best.
I also just have to circle back to, I don't think schools have to do everything.
Yeah.
When we water down schools and make them do everything, we start doing nothing really well.
Can you tell the law that though?
Well, especially
I sure can.
I do wonder too, like, since this is something that happens in California, we're in the same circuit. Is that a likelihood that it's coming our way?
I want to say I have a handout from a previous law conference about sleeping in schools, and you definitely need to address it because
like the mental health assessments being a thing. Like that is a
It's going to be a thing for the generations after some of us are out of education.
You know what,
because they
Darcy?
all like to say, I'm anxious.
You can.
So am I, people.
Some of us.
So am
Number of
I.
times you guys talk about your retirement, and I'm like, I have 20 years left. Knock it off.
Anna,
Well,
there's
that's
gonna
good
be-
because you're gonna get to see it change.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, I mean, IDEA needs to be reissued, rewritten, and it's going to include more mental health next time.
Yeah.
I would absolutely, put money on that one.
Okay, so here when they ask for that related mental health assessment, the district begins it, and then in that they're looking at the sleep and the behavior logs. They are coordinating with the student psychiatrist that's doing like med management, and then they're discussing possible like medical causes for both sleeping and the behaviors. As that assessment's going on, it's summer, so now she's in ESY. She's sleeping throughout pretty much the entire day of ESY. I don't know if they were like full day or half day ESYs, but it said she slept through the whole school day. And
regardless,
also,
that's longer than a 45-minute nap at that point.
Correct. Yeah.
And also, by default, exhibiting very few challenging behaviors at school. I was reading that. I was like,
It's all about perspective, I guess.
At home, the behaviors during summer are becoming a lot more severe, and parents increase medication. So now we're at the beginning of 10th grade. They're wrapping up that mental health assessment. The assessor concluded that the student lacked, quote, significant insight to benefit from school-based mental health therapy. And so they just recommended updating the behavior plan. The frequency and intensity of aggression, property destruction, and elopement continue to rise. And then sleep at the beginning of the year kind of decreases initially, but then it continues to take up a majority of the school day, or several hours. Let me see. It gets up to about two hours per day on average. So now we're in February of 10th grade. It's her annual IEP meeting. The data is showing that she is regressing in all of her behavior and social emotional goals. Now she's sleeping about 2 hours a day, exhibiting 17 acts of physical aggression per week. Her baseline in 9th grade was once every 2 weeks, and now she's 17 times per week. 12 acts of property destruction per week, which is up from 1. And then eloping 6 times per week on average, which is up from less than 1 time per week on average. So they're proposing new goals, maintaining life skills placement with a one-on-one now. They were concerned that decreasing and intervening on the sleep would then increase the behaviors. So they essentially kind of agree not to touch the sleep right now. They redo the behavior plan. They bring in a behavior specialist to help support, I think just a district one. And there had been some kind of increasing issues with parents transporting, because remember, she's choiced into a different school. But the district denied their request for transportation since it's their policy for the choice school, which I thought Darcy would be proud of, because she said that's an easy no. So good job, district. Parents signed the IEP at the meeting. A couple of weeks later, they say that they are not satisfied. They say that the mental health assessment didn't accurately represent the student. They asked for an IEE, were concerned about placement, and stated that the district is denying FAPE. They request a private placement, and again, asking for transportation.
I do think they have a little bit of I would have from the school stance a little concern when they say they don't have the capacity to engage in the counseling, right? That's potentially somebody who's like, I don't understand or have the skills to do it. And yet everybody's saying something's going on. We're sending the kid for this evaluation.
And so in that, I guess a question, and this isn't like the end result of the case. I still have more before we get there. But in that, they're saying like, you guys are denying FAPE. We're asking for a private placement because you're saying you can't serve her. District says, no, we're not going to do a different placement, that we are offering FAPE. So how can you say that when you're also saying, But we can't serve
all
you.
the data's going the wrong way. Her behavior is getting considerably worse. I don't know if there's something in their system that they think we have something else to try. Like we haven't used all our tools yet at the school system. That's what that makes me think of, especially in a place like California where they have day treatment places that are within district. And so maybe they have a little bit more in their toolbox that they haven't shared yet. But I just think, what do I do in Washington when I get this eval in this kid?
Yeah, there was a difference when we were hearing that the student was making progress on goals. We are not to that place anymore. We're not in that place anymore. And so you have to start questioning as a district if you can provide FAPE to this student and be looking at other settings, which may look like residential, may look like day treatment.
So
California has a lot more options than Washington State does, from what I've heard.
So you guys in this situation would not necessarily immediately deny a private placement, but would do more digging and more conversation.
Absolutely would not
I
deny
would.
a placement in private is true. The more digging, I don't know, they might even already be ready to start making a placement. They've dug a lot. They've been
district responds to parents' requests for a private placement with a denial. We are offering FAPE. We are going to deny that. We will have an IEP meeting where we can talk about transportation and drop-off strategies, but we're not going to change anything else about our IEP. So their target behaviors continue to increase. She starts refusing to get out of the car. It's taking her over 20 minutes to get into the building now during drop-off. Behaviors are increasing at home and in the community as well. Data in June of 10th grade is saying that she's sleeping almost 70% of the school day. So finally, parents decided to place her in a residential facility out of state, and they asked the district again for help. District again says no, that they are off. They have FAPE and we're ready to serve her, and so they deny that request.
I don't think this district's winning this one. Throwing it out there.
Yeah, this doesn't sound good based on the data you shared.
You cannot say you're providing FAPE when a student's sleeping, 80% of their day?
Yeah, 70 up to 70% of her day.
Yeah, how much did you say she was sleeping?
Up to 70%.
Up to 70?
Yeah, no.
That's...
And then you have to, there's so many underlying reasons that could be the cause of that, but none of them can be addressed by a school. Like severe depression, you would sleep a lot, health concerns, but those aren't easily remedied. Like this needs to go to a different level of care.
So parents have now privately placed her on their own. Within a few months, they have data indicating a dramatic reduction in any aggression or property destruction, still showing some and what they call noncompliance, but was significantly improving. Her sleeping during the school day is completely eliminated. The Leon's face right
This is in 2 months?
Yeah, that feels...
Yeah.
Does the residential place have a medical component to it?
There was a treating pediatrician and a behavior specialist there at the facility. I don't know about medication changes, but the treating pediatrician and the behavior specialist wrote to the parents' council and the district describing that like her needs were complex and she should stay in a placement similar to that, if not theirs, to make educational progress. So then the family with their counsel are saying that like, look, these are not medical issues. Like this is a school issue if we're not changing anything else, but it's only her, like what strategies they're using and where she is. And that's showing that a private placement is what is needed to be able to make progress. And then that's backed up by the behavior specialist at this residential place.
Insert the fact that I think this attorney did a really good job of setting up the district to have to pay for residential. There's like a lot of, this is happening so frequently that the goal is to get the school to pay. And if the school to pay from the start, no bubbles, no trouble.
that should be the goal. If the school can't do
I agree.
the ultimate job of helping the kid make progress, then they should. I guess I kind of think of this in 2 months, you had a complete turnaround, like from that district stance. I would want to, and there's potentially a letter that comes out that says this kid should stay here. Well, that's a benefit to where she's at, not necessarily a benefit to her educational progress. So I would want to go and see, what does her school day look like?
So that's
Like,
exactly
is
what
there
they
something
did.
that is there something they could do that went like, wow, we missed this, or this is really different? Like, is there something there that they could follow up on that kind of tips it towards their hand?
What
So
they
that
learn, Anna?
the district did send their behavior specialist to observe the student in the programming. She was showing still improvements, still requiring a pretty high level of supervision and intensity in programming. But the family continued to communicate with the district, as did the school. Parents then file for due process in November of 11th grade now, saying that all this data is showing that this residential placement is her LRE and is what is FAPE, and that district should be funding the placement.
And did the district do anything to say, this is what looked different, this is what we can do, this is a updated proposal for what an IEP program could look like?
Not that this case did not say that they came back with any other changes other than we stand ready to serve in our old programming. So what do you guys think happened?
I would just like to point out here for a second that the little like cold opener at the beginning, the little voiceover we put was, I'm Stefan. I'm joined by three brilliant minds in special education. Leanne and Darcy have been on it from the get-go. They're like, I would have done this. You're like, yeah, that's actually kind of what happened. And I would have done this, and they shouldn't have done this. And it's like ping, ping, ping. It's like you gave them the case ahead of time. Very impressed.
I'm impressed with the district up until the end.
I was going to say,
I was wondering, are we going to walk
But
that
everything
back
that they
all,
did,
or?
that they
Up
should have
until the
done, you
end.
guys, before Anna even got there, you're like, well, I would have paid for a private placement and like, check it out. Look. I wish we had a way to convey everybody's faces when this student made the turnaround in like 2 months. We're all like, excuse me? That's kind of crazy, unheard of.
The first thing I think with that is medication, or something that the school couldn't have done, because that's not a behavioral change. That's like a complete different child.
Well, remember in that mental health assessment, they said medication was not a factor.
So the other thing you have to think about too is like, now the student's out of the home. Was there something in the home that was happening at nighttime where they weren't sleeping all night? She wasn't sleeping all night, and then the next day she's sleeping because of that. So there's, we're detectives in this work. What is working, and how then the school should say, we need to replicate that here if they truly are going to triple down that they're not going to pay for this residential placement, which I think Darcy and I both are like, pay for the residential placement. It's working. That's your FAPE. That's her LRE. I think they're going to pay for it, but they're going to pay for it after they pay for a lot of attorneys.
I agree with Leanne. I think they misstepped on that very last one by leaving their offer of FAPE the exact same, where she wasn't making progress and now she is. I think that was the potential misstep there.
Are you waiting for me? I agree with them. I'm not going to disagree.
Didn't want to cut you off. Yeah, so the ALJ concluded that on several procedural and substantive measures, the district had not met its obligations. So the family was awarded about $110,000 in reimbursement for tuition, about $10,000 for reimbursement for travel costs. Any of the other remedies were denied. So reimbursement of the IEE, comp ed for OT they had asked for, and then there were additional travel outside of what was recommended. So they didn't get that stuff. They also didn't get full tuition reimbursement because the residential was not on an approved California placement list. So the amount awarded was limited to the amounts like typically approved by district IEP teams offering residential placements. So I think one of my biggest takeaways, I think, is kind of just that big bulk conversation we had at the beginning, and like those medical and behavioral symptoms that are eating at the school day can really be a big barrier to accessing your education. And just because they're making progress now doesn't mean you don't need to kind of figure it out, because that progress could slow or halt.
I think when you switch between a 45-minute nap to 70% of your school day, there's a big difference in that conversation.
Yeah, I think it's very timely with the fact that we are looking at behavior schools. And as we go around, I think there's going to become some clarity for districts around how long do we keep trying to figure out FAPE in our setting before we realize that we don't have capacity for it. And the state has to kick in with dollars. But the district would have been better off to choose that facility for her instead of having the family choose and then not get full reimbursement. So being more proactive about finding appropriate settings if you can't do it in your district is, I think we're moving that direction in our state finally.
And I think finding residential treatment centers that would take a high school student with those disabilities and struggles could be really hard to find in the first place, because the RTCs are so specialized.
No, that's definitely true. Maybe more options in California than here.
I think
when they sent her out of state, right? So that one wasn't even in.
True.
Yeah.
I'm assuming I didn't necessarily say it was out of state, but it wasn't on their approved list. So I would assume.
At the beginning, in the initial, they sent her to an out of state residential facility.
Yeah.
You said.
Thank you. I didn't remember
that. See, that was recorded. I do listen to you.
It's possible, though, if they would have been the proactive, we're going to offer this and we're going to research a setting, that they could have found something in state.
Well, especially with the district support, right? Like if district had been supporting together, they could have been a lot closer to home.
Not to say that it's a small decision, though, to place a student in residential and take them from their family and everything they know. I don't think that's an easy decision, but being proactive feels like the right response there.
I'm glad she's doing well.
Yes.
Yeah, you kind of started off by saying like, oh, this isn't a super feel good one. But then when you said like she made that turnaround, I was like, the district had to pay through the nose.
But I think what doesn't feel good to me is that the district, I think, could have made a lot of things, could have done a lot of things differently prior to the ending result.
Gotcha.
We also know what it feels like to go through one of these due process cases, maybe not this extreme, but it takes so much out of your staff. And it takes so many people leave the field because of due process demand and the stress. Teachers don't think about being on a witness stand as their dream job, as part of their dream job. So I think they put their staff through a lot, unfortunately.
Not teaching that in SPED undergraduate programs.
Sorry. Here's how you take an oath when you get sued.
I mean, we see just with our a family might come in and say, I'm calling my attorney. And the level of anxiety in the room is so high and elevated at that point. And that's just a hint. Like, this people have to go to therapy afterwards. The teachers have to go to therapy. The director.
We'll be sending them to residential treatment facilities when we're done. Like,
There you go. So if it's available for teachers in the region,
they'll have to go out of state. I do think, though, this goes to one of those things, because I completely agree with Leanne. It's really hard on your system and your staff. Staff don't want to stay. They don't want to work with the kid. They don't want to work with the family. Like, all of those things really do happen for teachers. I mean, it's a huge loss. That's not the profession that they think that they go into. And I think as a system, we need to be better about saying we're the experts. This is what we're doing. This is why we're doing it. And when we can't do it, we say that too.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for tuning into Spedsplaining. If you have questions or thoughts about today's episode, we would love to hear from you. Head over to our links in the show notes where you could drop your questions, join the conversations, and connect with us. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode if you found it helpful. Until next time, keep learning.